Yep. Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the London Borough of Newham's Regeneration, Housing and Environment Scrutiny Commission. Can everybody present hear me?
Yes.
Fantastic. This evening's meeting is being held at East Ham Town Hall. Members unable to join us physically at this location are able to join remotely. However, they will not be able to vote and their attendance won't officially be recorded, although their virtual attendance will be noted in the minutes. I would like to welcome the members of the public and press who are physically attending or watching on YouTube. And with regards to meeting etiquette, members of the council, please can I ask that you indicate you wish to speak by raising your physical hand or by the hand up symbol on the Zoom dashboard. And I don't think we have any members there. So this meeting of the London Borough of Newham Regeneration, Housing and Environment Scrutiny Commission is now called to order. Agenda item number 1, apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies?
We do, Chair. So we have apologies from Councillor Shah and Councillor Hudson.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else know of any apologies that need to be noted? No? Okay, great. Apologies for absence from members will be recorded, so thank you very much. Agenda item number 2, declarations of interest. Are there any members wishing to make any declarations of interest at this time? No? Okay. If no, can you please note that? Thank you very much. Agenda item number 4 is the minutes of a previous meeting on the 13th of July 2022. Does anyone have any issues that they'd like to raise with the minutes or any changes that need to happen? No? Okay, then I move as a correct record the minutes of the last meeting of the Commission held on the 13th of July 2022. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you. Are the minutes agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. Thank you very much. Agenda item number 4, forward work programme and recommendations tracker. The Commission will note that the items to be discussed at the next meeting are outlined in the work programme report and the agenda papers. Would any members like to make suggestions or amendments to the items that are scheduled to be discussed at the next meeting? No? Any members have any comments? No? Okay, great. Moving on. Agenda item number 5, affordable housing delivery plan and housing delivery in Newham.
Chair, did you want to look at the action, approve the actions tracker as well, or potentially ask questions about some of the outstanding?
We could do. I did ask, but no one's got them, so we can do them in written format.
Yes.
I'm just thinking for time. So we're going to move to agenda item number 5. I was initially going to switch them, but I think we'll keep it as it is for now. Agenda item number 5, affordable housing delivery plan and housing delivery in Newham. This item is to allow members to question how the council intends to meet its commitment to deliver an additional 1,500 homes in the borough, where these will be, the infrastructure that will be required for delivery, and the impact of this on the built environment of Newham, as well as to understand how housing growth is managed, the impact that this has on residents, and the effects on the borough's built environment. I'm delighted to welcome this evening Mayor of Newham, Roxana Fiaz, Dave Hughes, Corporate Director of Inclusive Economy and Housing, Chris Holland, Head of Delivery at Community Wealth Building, and Deborah Heenan, CEO of Popular Living. Thank you very much for joining us. Do you have a presentation or would you like to talk to the report first? You've got up to 5 minutes.
I was going to suggest, if it's okay with you, Chair, and other members of this scrutiny, I'll just do a few introductory remarks and then we can just jump straight into questions. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, super. Thank you very much. So, I'm really pleased to be here, and I think this is a really important area of scrutiny. Appreciates the lines of inquiry, and we look forward to coming back on a regular basis to engage with you around our updates on housing delivery here in the London Borough. Just by way of context and situating the importance of the Manifesto pledge with regards to delivering and ensuring starts in order to meet 1,500 homes that our people can afford. It's in essence in response to the continuing catastrophizing that's occurring in the housing market in this borough, but also across London. We are at crisis proportions, and we have remained in a crisis catastrophe scenario for at least 10 years plus. We have a housing waiting list of some 37,000 people, and it grows. We have a significant number of households in temporary accommodation, and we're seeing a retraction in terms of housing supply, in terms of the private rented sector in the borough of some 47% over the last 12 months alone. And this is in the context of a borough where the proportion of residents live in a majority of our residents live in the private rented sector, some 60%. Majority of homes that have been bought to let by private landlords are owned by landlords that don't have an investment or an interest in the borough, in so much as they're landlords that live outside of the borough. They're not, in addition, living here. The delivery of the 1,500 homes will be through a combination of direct delivery as per our term one approach, through a one council approach, leveraging the skill expertise of the Newham Council Community Wealth Building Place, i.e. Regeneration team, and also Poplo Living, which is the council's wholly owned housing delivery company. And we've got Deborah Heenan here. In addition, there are a range of regeneration programmes underway that will also be contributing to housing pipeline and supply they're driving. And all of that is situated within the context of our housing delivery strategy, which we developed in two parts during term one. Part one really set out the scale and broad intentions and direction of travel. And then part two of the housing delivery strategy, which was published and approved at Cabinet. It would have been early parts, at the tail end of 2021, our housing delivery strategy. And I would just I'm making reference to those because I think it's really important for members of this committee to read those two documents in order to engage with this pipeline of delivery on the 1,500. So in essence, it's through direct delivery, it's acquisitions, and it will also, we're ensuring that we assert the affordable housing products that our residents can afford, given the crippling costs of housing in the capital.
Yeah? Okay. Yeah, no worries. Take time. Sorry.
Okay.
You finished?
Yeah.
Okay, no worries. Thank you very much for that. Sorry about that little introduction there. Does anyone have any questions for the Mayor? Councillor Morris?
Right, so carpenter's viability, so let me direct you to page 34 of the report. And what caught my attention was carpenter's viability. So I note that in the report it says that the viability to deliver 50% of homes and the internal rate of return of 3.5%, payback period of 50 years, has been quite consistent in 3 stages. But the report also notes that there is volatility within the construction sector. In fact, I've been working on a capital project which has doubled by 100% since we first started in 2019. So with that context out of the way, I guess my question is, when can we expect the submission of the new viability report to be submitted to Cabinet? And do you have any, not guesses, but are there any indications that on what would be the internal rate of return and the percentage of affordability?
Okay, really good question. I'll bring it in, Deborah, in a moment, but Dave also may want to comment. But again, some initial remarks. The Carpenters Estate Programme is circa 12 to 15 year delivery pipeline programme, and it will be undertaken in different phases. And we always, as part of the ongoing process of reviewing and progress tracking the programme, which encompasses monthly meetings that are held with key officers from both Poplo, the council, alongside Cabinet Lead for Finance and Resources and the Cabinet Lead for Housing Services. We track and monitor all manner of risks, and then we have discussions around mitigations. Of course, no one would have anticipated the scale of inflationary pressures that we are contending with now, and the viability that will inform the Cabinet report, which is due to come to Cabinet by the end of this year from recollection of the forward plan, will set out our response to the inflationary risks and pressures. But remember and bear in mind the 15-year timeframe of the overall delivery. So it may be a case that during this current phase, or over the next 2 to 3 years, inflationary pressures are great. The level of may have to be adapted, but overall, across a lifetime of the scheme, when you look at the quantum total of housing that will be delivered, we would be looking at meeting the 50% of all homes built on the estate being at social rent levels generally affordable. But if I may, through the chair, pass back to Dave and Debs to elaborate in a bit more detail.
Thank you, Mayor. So what I'm going to do is just say, if Deborah can come in and talk specifically about the state regen scheme at the Carpenters and how we're dealing with the various levels of looking at the feasibility and looking at deliverability. And then Chris, who was obviously working on a range of homes delivery all over Newham. Chris will give a bit of an overview about what we're looking at with the market and inflationary pressures and how we're dealing with it and how we're looking to plan to accommodate and mitigate against it in the future.
Sorry, just very quickly, sorry through the chair. I normally like to give people up to 2 minutes. Maybe I'll give someone else another 2 minutes, but it sounded like we were going to do quite a bit there in terms of giving an overview. Maybe further along, there'll be points where other people can come in. I'm happy for Deborah to come in for 2 minutes, but after that, I'll have to move on and let other people get involved. Is that okay? Yeah? Yes. Okay, so maybe whoever's best suited, whether it's Deborah or...
I think because it was specifically raised around Carpenters, if Deb comes in.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So to address your question directly, one of the big advantages of being an arm's length company is the strength and depth we've got on our board. So countryside developments, lend lease, central government experience, and the seniors on that board have been through at least 2 recessions, and I was in central government for the 2008 recession. So we have an audit and risk committee. We are looking at this very closely, but we would repeat what the Mayor has said, that this is a build to rent business very deliberately, because we're taking a 50-year view, and we will only proceed when a phase of the development is viable, and then the interest rates are locked in for the 45, 50 years of that build to rent. So that gives us a lot of insulation from the external world, whereas build for sale, as you know, with the volumetric builders, they're very susceptible to changes in the housing market and in interest rates. And the only other thing I'd say is, with that expertise, we've spent a lot of time and effort designing the Carpenters. So the first phases are getting things built without a huge capital expenditure, so we don't have a dead weight of debt in the early phases of the scheme, and that's helping the viability enormously.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. Do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, so I noticed in the report that looking at a range of finance options, and I just wanted to know where the finance for Carpenters will come from, and what are the interest rates of them?
Could you?
Okay, so
Which of the report are you referring to? Just be helpful.
So on page 35.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah. There's public works loan.
Yeah.
So it's looking at for the regeneration sources of finance for your regeneration program. We'll come around and public works loan book is popular. Though an arm's length company is able to apply for funding. So I guess I'm asking, will the public loans work called sort of Carpenters?
That's best directed to Dave Hughes.
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks, Beth. Yeah.
So not just for carpenters, generally for our whole affordable housing programme, we have a cocktail of funding that comes from public works, like loan board and borrowing, or HRA, gap investment.
And grants. Grants.
For grants, yeah. And then, yes, grants from the GLA. So, you know, we had over 120 million in the previous programme. This year, we've this programme for the next 3 years, we've got 90 million. So we've got 3 sources of funding that we can call on, and depending on the scheme and the timing of the scheme, we put a cocktail of funding from those 3 sources. You're right, the public loans board, obviously the rates are going up, so we've got to factor that into the business planning for each scheme. And in some schemes, it might be better to use grant monies from the GLA, or even we're allowed to use our receipts from our right to buy funding. So it very much depends at any one point in time which fund we're going to use, or which cocktail mixture of funds we're going to use for individual schemes.
Okay, thank you very much. I've got a very quick question. You talk about phases of the development, phase 1, 2, 3, etc. At the end of it all, we'll end up with 50% affordable or social housing over the whole scheme. So that could mean potentially that phase 1 could be less than 50%, but phase 2 will balance it out, etc., etc. Do you anticipate that phase 1 will be higher or lower than, what do you anticipate phase 1?
As it so happens, as per what Deborah said, we've constructed. So as you'll be aware, James Riley Point was given planning approval. James Riley Point is a restoration piece element of the Carpenters Estate, and that will be wholly social rent, because it sits within the housing services area. And I'll need to defer to Deborah in terms of what percentage of James Riley Point contributes to the social rent element of that phase 1. But broadly, it will be all of the private, the elements of or parts of the Carpenters Estate scheme which will help the estate regeneration programme pay for itself. That's part of a phase-in that we're going to be submitting an outline master. Well, we've submitted the outline master plan. We're looking for approval from the LLDC, and we'll be looking at commencing that imminently. But in the initial immediate phase, it will be largely social rent because it's James Riley Point. But if through the chair, perhaps Deborah could provide a bit more explanation.
Deborah, do you have the exact numbers for that question?
Yes, so it's 126 affordable, and there are 4 leaseholders who still have properties in James Riley. So that gives us a little bit over 10% of the affordable. And the reason for it being first is in working with the residents, they wanted restoration. It's also really good for the environment because we save all the embodied carbon of the reinforced concrete frame and substructure, and it's cheaper, going back to the protecting the viability. So that's just 10% of the affordable total delivered in the first phase. Okay, so just to be clear, so you said, sorry, so out of the first phase, 10% is going to be affordable, is that correct? No, apologies. It's almost entirely affordable, and it's around 130 homes. And those homes, because the entire scheme is on just over 2,000, that 130 will give you more than 10% of your total affordable homes. Overall, thank you. That's what I thought. Thank you very much. Thank you. Does any member have a question? Yes.
Hi, guys. So Richard sent along the annual report for popular living later in the pack. So it's not in this pack. It's I think, yeah. And I'm looking at page 5 of that, which is the group strategic report, and it's looking at the key performance indicators around housing management. So I've noticed we've missed KPIs around occupancy, current arrears, former arrears, and total bad debt provision. And that seems to be, from the kind of narrative that's provided around it, that seems to be because of issues with Cheviot House. I just wanted to kind of get a bit more understanding. Could you explain a bit more about what those issues were?
Yes, Chair. So we, under the old company, Redmore Ventures, we inherited the only property that we have that's out of borough. It's called Cheviot House, and it's in Aldgate in Tower Hamlets. It's all studio apartments. So as soon as COVID happened, all there was a move out of London. So a lot of people left and went back to live with their families because obviously they were working from home. And then again, because we work closely with the council, we had empty studios. So we used those for temporary accommodation, and working again with the council, just some of those people were in a very difficult stage of life. So that's a combination of voids and then some antisocial behaviour on that block. So of all of our portfolio, that one is the problem child, but it's now getting a lot better post-COVID, and we're working with the council on the antisocial behaviour.
You have supplementary?
Yeah, just a quick one. So we've talked previously, the mayor in her initial summary talked about landlords that live outside the borough and that not being optimum, but I think from what I've seen, so we are a landlord that lives outside the borough, and it sort of seems to be causing us difficulties. Have we got any plans to work out some of that sort of almost strategic issue there in relation to Cheviot House?
If I may, just by way of providing some additional explanation. So pre-2018, Popular Living was known as Regeneration Ventures, and it went on an escapade because its whole rationale was to deliver homes rent. It was a very different model under the previous administration than what it is now, but it remains a liability for the shape-shifted, for want of a better word, vehicle that is owned wholly by the council, now known as Popular Living. We wouldn't make that type of investment in this day and age, and it still remains as part of the portfolio of properties that Popular Living owns, and they're trying to remedy something that is a legacy project programme.
Okay, you've had a supplementary, so is it really burning?
I appreciate that. I just wanted to work out if we're still housing people there, if we're still putting up people there.
Fair question.
Okay. If through the chair, Deborah?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So we are still renting it at the moment, but we're actively looking at options. We didn't look at disposal during the pandemic because we would have got a really suboptimal price. But now that the prices are coming back in that area, because people are coming back to the city, we are considering options, and we'll bring them back to the council. And, you know, it's all our other properties, we get really, really good customer feedback because they're in borough, they're brand new, and they're well looked after.
Thank you. I think your question was essentially to do with temporary accommodation, right? Are we, as Newham, still housing people there? That's the question, I think.
So we're not placing, forgive me, because I don't delve into the operational detail of Popular Living. I set strategic stuff with.
Yeah.
So this would be a question to Deborah, which is whether or not we use that particular property for housing residents on our council housing wage.
Yeah.
That's the question.
It's a very, very small number. The entire building is less than 100. So I think we're now, it's been shrinking. So it could be as little as 10, but I can confirm
Yeah,
back.
please, if you could provide those numbers, that'd be great as of today, and then send them to the clerk, that'd be great. Thank you. Carolyn, and I'll come to Rika.
These might be stupid questions in a way. I'm sorry for this if they come across as really stupid. But this comes from some of my own personal casework, just to get some sort of...
Sorry, just very quickly, we can't mention individual casework. It has to be high level.
It's general. I just want to know,
Yeah.
when we refer to social rent, what kind of amount are we actually talking about? And will those then people renting be, who then move into those properties, be from the council housing waiting list?
Yeah, Persia.
Yeah, I really appreciate the question, and actually, as it so happens, we're working through a public-facing document that will set out the different tenures of housing product, and social rent follows a formula as applied by all councils, obviously, and it's a certain percentage of the average rent in a locality. And it's for,
Off the point.
sorry, I'll pass it through the chair to Dave, but just in essence, it would be offered to those residents that meet the criteria of our housing allocations policy and on the housing waiting list.
Okay, and what sort of amount? What sort of amounts are we talking?
I think that's what you want Dave to answer.
Yeah.
So in pounds and pence.
Yeah, so obviously there are a number of products around affordability. It gets very confusing for everyone, myself included. So what we like to use is an expression called genuinely affordable, which is effectively social rent. And our target is to have a minimum of 50% on all of our schemes, whether it be Populo developing their portfolio, or with Chris doing the direct developments for the council. We have a minimum 50% target of genuine affordable homes.
Just.
That's not what I meant. What I meant was...
Sorry, so just.
Oh, in terms of figure?
Yes, she's asking figure. So if we got a bed flat, how much is that? That's what
If it
she's
was
asking.
me,
Yeah.
and I fit the criteria, I'm a single mother of 3 children.
That's
I
what,
need a 3-bedroom property. What would I be paying?
that's what she's saying.
Right, I'm going to bring him in because Chris is not coming. Chris, on average, what are we looking at for social rents? Range between 2 and 3 bed properties.
I don't actually have the information in front of me. It would depend. So we do 2 primarily types of rent. One is London affordable rents, and then target rent. So the current GLA programme is London affordable rent, and the GLA prescribe what the rent should be per unit type. So I haven't got that in front of me, but I'm more happy to provide that through the chair. The new programme is going to be at target rent, which is a slightly different rent regime, which is even lower again. And that's based on a 99, that's based on a valuation based on 99 values. Again, I can provide you general figures, maybe tomorrow, on what those levels are.
I'll try and get it before the end of the
So if
meeting.
I can,
Please, yeah. Sorry.
Chair, if
Deborah's
I can jump in, just to give you the rule of thumb that we're talking to customers in the business is, if it was a 3-bedroom, if it was private for rent and it's brand new and large, you might be £1,600 a month in the market rent. And if it was LAR, you would often be paying half of that.
Okay, but the genuinely affordable that we just heard from the mayor is
That would
half.
be it would be 800, and it can be less. It
And
depends.
that's genuinely affordable. That's the title.
Yes.
But council rent would be less than that. So what's that? Because council rent for, say, a 3-bed house would probably be about maybe 650, 700. So what's that band?
So genuinely affordable will cover the London affordable rent level or social rent, and it will be subject to a whole series of viability scenarios of that particular development, and how to ensure we can deliver that development within the budget envelope that's been assigned, and that will have an impact in terms of the tenure mix and how some of those units will be offered at London affordable rent and which ones will be offered or could be offered at social rent. But you're right, but the broad range would be, as per what Deborah has said, looking at half of market.
Yeah, no, that's...
So, sorry, just before we come back in there, can I just make a note, please, to the clerk that we get an information document for the committee laying out each level, each tier, and roughly what we're looking at. So it's like a grid format, so members can understand what that's going to be. Do you have a supplementary?
Yeah, I do. It's a sort of supplementary comment question. I presume that if people meet the criteria and are on the list, there'll be no what we call affordability check. And the reason I ask that is because trying to help a person get a property under London living rent, what I was absolutely shocked at was a 3-bedroom flat, which I'm pretty sure the rent per month is not too bad. It's 1,198, which would be ideal. She's currently paying 1,350 for a 2-bedroom house on the private rented market. But the affordability check was she had to earn, the household income had to be less than 60,000, but wait for it, more than 40,000.
Just very quickly there, sorry to interject, and I know I feel like I'm haranguing you, but unless the council set that policy, which I'm pretty sure you
didn't, I know, but I'm asking that we wouldn't be doing anything similar.
Yeah, okay, that's
Because the point being, now, effectively, even though she would meet the criteria in terms of need, she is literally ineligible because as a single mother on universal credit, she only gets £1,750 per month. So there's no way her income comes close to 40,000. So for me, it's like, because she's a single person, it's impossible.
okay, thank you.
So I just want to make sure that we're not going to be doing anything similar, which means that people in dire need are going to end up effectively with nowhere to go.
Okay, thank you. I think if we condense that down, I think essentially are people on the waiting list going to be put under those affordability checks to get into the properties you're buying?
We've got a really clear allocations policy that's predicated on needs. And what I would suggest, if it's helpful, a future, I don't know whether you've got the housing services lead and the officers coming.
Yeah,
they'll be
December.
able to elaborate,
Yeah.
but the houses that we're delivering through the Affordable Homes for Newham programme would not apply that affordability test because we have to align to other policies in relation to housing policies and allocation policy.
Councillor Chadha?
One friendly challenge to Deborah. You placed a lot of emphasis on the experience and the expertise of your board, which I don't doubt in any sense, but do you think that's sufficient? Do you think that's appropriate at a time of great churn when people are moving on quite a bit? And is that in danger of giving you key dependency problems as well? So I'm just putting that as a challenge and not necessarily an answer to that. My substantive question was around your, as Lewis mentioned, Councillor Godfrey mentioned, your business plan. And in several places, you've mentioned ESG, your commitment to reporting on ESG and how you're going to support the council in its efforts. But there's very scant detail about actually what Poplar has delivered to date around ESG. Could you flesh that out for us, perhaps?
Okay, so sorry, just in reference to the skills on the board, it was just a remark that of course we've got the skills in the executive because we've recruited to the executive and to the team. It's just one of the advantages of having an arm's length company. You do have a board and you can tap into that additional experience, and it's proving very valuable at this moment in time. And on the ESG, I'm not quite sure what you're asking.
Asking how do you contribute to ESG? It's mentioned.
Explain what the acronym stands for.
Sorry, environment, social, and green. Is it? It's your commitment to providing social value back to the borough.
Okay, so our entire company is predicated on that. Apologies, we call it sustainable development, which is more in the residential development sector. So let me give you one concrete example. We looked at one site called the Hartley, and in old RDV would have just gone along and built some homes on it. We looked at the whole area and found that there's an older population, some of whom are in homes with Victorian terraces with stairs. And a classic thing for elderly people is to have a trip or slip and go into A&E and then have a terrible time with a bed in their front room. So if you look at their life cycle. So we looked at a cost benefit analysis and came back to the council and said, we think it would be better if we built later living on that site. And we've weighed up all the options as a cost benefit, because our bottom line is not just financial, it's sustainable development, so social, environmental, economic. And the council agreed with this, and we're now building later living on Hartley, working very closely with council colleagues to make sure that we approach people who are particularly vulnerable in the wrong type of housing for them, thereby adding the value. If the Carpenters is the massive example of that, because if you look at the Carpenter scheme, and I'd be very happy to take any councillors around the scheme, it is very, very different to a traditional JV or private sector development, because we are achieving a genuine mixed community on that site, and it's all about the social and environmental value, not just a bottom line.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
Just quickly, Carlinian said the same thing about the expertise on their board as well. So I think we just need to move away from a cultural dependency on expertise in individuals, and that's all I'm saying on that. The other aspect, in the business plan, you continue to refer to it as ESG. So I think we just need to be careful. If residents are looking for the added value that Poplar is providing, and we're using different terms, I think we just need to be consistent across the board. And I think maybe it's worth, especially if you're looking to attract additional funding, to actually flesh out what that ESG offer is, because it's very muddy in the business plan as it stands at the moment. That's my comment.
Okay.
I wanted to just come back on a couple of things. Point taken on the ESG point, and actually just really to echo what Deborah said. The popular living proposition and model, notwithstanding the point you've made around Carillion not aping that model, we've got amongst the most skilled individuals on a board that are not pursuing a traditional joint venture housing delivery company that a lot of other councils established. We actually changed to Popular Living, and it is alert and alive to our inclusive economy strategic requirements as a council, because it's part of the council, albeit it's a subsidiary of the arm's length, and it has its own board because that's the legal requirement. It supports and contributes to community wealth building. It's not blind and oblivious and ignorant of the inclusive economy and community wealth building requirements that it also has to pursue. But I take on your point around being much more explicit in the reports, and I'll pick that up with officers. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Does any other member have a question? Councillor Rush?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Going back to what was said a bit earlier about the affordable homes being about 50% of private renting value, the example of 1,600 makes it into 800. As we're moving forward, and as we all know, private rents are going up well above inflation at the moment. There's bidding wars going because of the shortage of homes. Are pro rata affordable rents be going up and then become unaffordable perhaps in the future, or are they going to be capped at a level at some point, so we don't have that scenario where they end up being silly prices as well, if that question makes sense?
Yeah, no, it does make sense. So the formula that applies as it pertains to social rent and London affordable rent is set by the GLA, and it is actually in response to the housing crisis. So I cannot conceive of any point in the near future or over the next 15 years where we wouldn't have a similar London living rent proposition or product being driven and set by a Mayor of London in light of the acute housing crisis in London. But obviously, I do not have a crystal ball. We could have a reaction, a very different type of Mayor of London who doesn't believe in this stuff. But similarly, there is a regime and statutory framework that applies and has to be followed as it pertains to setting the social rent level as well. But perhaps Dave, who's sitting behind me, can elaborate a bit more.
Very quickly.
No, I wouldn't get that. Mayor's covered it fine there. Of course, we've got the same issue with our own council rents in terms of what our increases are going to be this year.
You
No supplement.
have a supplementary? No? Okay. Does any other member have a question at this time?
I've got another.
Yeah, okay, I'll ask one then. I'll bring myself in, then I'll bring you two.
Sorry.
Looking at Appendix 2, acquisitions pipeline, my question is, the sums on here are quite eye-watering. There's a lot of money going into this. My first question is, how sustainable is this acquisition policy? And how long can we continue at this pace? Also, in the previous 4 years, it was 1,000 homes. This time it's 1,500 homes. Bearing in mind, I think the waiting list is what, 27,000 or 28,000? I'm not necessarily sure we can build enough homes to satisfy the demand. So how long can we continue to go for the next 4 years? Do you anticipate another 1,500 homes, 2,000 homes? How long can we keep going at this pace?
Okay, so being very, very clear, at no point has anyone in this administration, including me, claimed that through the housing delivery programme, we're going to be able to remedy the housing supply crisis in the borough. And that's the reason why we're also working really hard in working with landlords directly through the private landlord licensing scheme to elevate good exemplary practice in the private rented sector. It's the reason why we're campaigning for rent caps that the Mayor of London is campaigning for. You are right, the numbers are eye-watering, and it's a demonstration of the scale of intent and ambition, but it is all being done prudently. We will not overreach. We've got to meet and respond to, a balance in terms of a risk appetite alongside the exposure to borrowing, not least because of the current climate, and borrowing over a 50-year timeframe or horizon from the Public Loans Work Board, and making sure that in terms of our housing delivery, what we are doing ourselves directly and what we are doing on some schemes through popular living. Some of the popular living schemes and programmes can also pay for themselves. So that's what's happening with the Carpenters Estate. But we would not be putting ourselves, and we can't in any case, we've got very robust governance arrangements as it pertains to borrowing and everything associated with that. And perhaps through the chair, Dave may want to add half a second's worth of words.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. That's Mayor through the Chair. Yes, as the Mayor says, 1,500 does not sort out the crisis, but it shows our commitment to at least improving supply. 1,500 is a mix, though, of acquisitions and new build. So 1,000 are going to be the new build, but we've got 500 acquisitions. It could be that over time we find that it's more prudent. It's prudent to actually do more acquisitions of existing stock. Say, for example, private sector developers find themselves having to dispose of stock because they can't move it. We might want to shift our resource to buy some of those private sector stock that currently can't be shifted. So it might be that we're constantly looking at the business case of whether we should be trying to build new social housing or whether we can actually acquire existing units. And obviously, we're in unusual times in terms of the shifts in the housing market. So that's something that very much we keep an eye on and are predicting into the future what the best use of our resources to improve housing supply. But I would say the bulk housing supply is coming through the private sector. So we're now getting a lot more units coming through because we've got strong planning policies to actually require that policies get the policy target of 30% for affordable housing. We actually push hard on developers for them to hit that. So a lot of our affordable housing is coming through private sector departments where we actually get nominations into affordable housing.
Thank you. My supplementary question is, in terms of all this money that we're borrowing, obviously you said it's a cocktail of things. So you've got grant money, you've got debt, you've got other bits and bobs. The money that the council borrows itself, the interest, does that have to be paid back from the general fund?
That's from HRA.
That's from the HRA, not from the general fund. And at the moment, do you have any idea how much per year it's costing us to finance this amount of money that's being borrowed?
I'll come back to Richard to give it.
Yeah, is that okay? Thank you very much. Does anyone have a question?
How much longer have we got?
Sorry?
How much longer have we got of this section?
No, ask your question. Let's see.
So I'm looking at page 36 on your packs, which is page 6 of the document, section 3.34 and 3.35. It's really good to read that popular schemes are built to a different standard, which is higher than building regulation. But when I read that, I assumed that delivering that good standard would cost more than you would expect it to cost. And given the financial turmoil that we've talked about, can you commit to continuing to do that?
I can commit to ensuring that everything that we do as council promotes, aids and progresses our intention that's set out as one of a number of important strategic outcomes we want to achieve as part of building a fairer Newham, that our environments, our homes, support and contribute to the health, well-being and happiness of our residents. And if I think about the scale of pretty bad stock in the private sector and the impact of that psychologically, emotionally, in health terms, I will always commit to ensuring that we deliver something that is optimal. And I think we also have to consider that in the context of the higher standards than building regulations, these are the building regulations that led to some pretty significant issues such as Grenfell. But perhaps on the technical front, through the chair, if that's okay, I will pass over to Deborah to just detail what the higher standard actually means, because some of it relates to climate emergency in order to meet our 2030 and 2050 requirements, obligations, which the current sector building regulations don't sufficiently respond to.
Can I just come in there? I'm not going to go to Deborah, sorry, Deborah, just because of time. But I think ostensibly your question, shoot me down if I'm wrong, was the standard that we're at now, can we guarantee that we're going to continue to do that standard into the future? Do you feel that you got your answer?
I feel I got a answer, which...
Okay, so do you want to ask a supplementary or?
I don't think it's...
You sure?
Chair, very, very briefly, what might be helpful in response is our business model is different. It's a build to rent. So we take a 50-year view. So the business model, the viability all works with building to a higher standard because it lasts better. And that's all built into the business model. So you should see a higher standard in the homes we build.
Thank you. And I don't want to cut you, but I think ostensibly we get that, and obviously that's the model. But I think what he's asking for is that just into the future. So I've been to see, some of the properties. I've seen it. They've got built-in Wi-Fi, high-speed broadband, all that sort of stuff. Absolutely fantastic. And I think what he's saying, when times get tough, can we ensure that we keep to that standard? And I think it's just kind of like yes or no, to be honest. But if it's more than that, absolutely.
I understood the question as being, and forgive me if I've misinterpreted it, you're not going to be able to meet that standard in light of our financial constraints. Hence my response. The intention is to meet
that standard.
That standard, and I can commit to ensuring that we're producing in line with the outcomes that we're adhering to, that will contribute to the health, well-being and happiness of our residents and respond to other important strategies like climate emergency, hence the higher standards.
Okay, I'll leave it there. Does anybody else have, no supplementary? No? Okay. Councillor Zubek.
Thank you, Chair. Just my questions about for the housing application, because mostly we are running the surgery, mostly the housing application is turn up every single day, increase. Just I want to know what my point about this. Like last year between November 2021 and February 2022, the housing applications were refreshing in the refresh on like a couple of months ago. And I want to just know how many applications is rejected and how many in the process so far now.
Okay, so in relation to housing delivery, how many houses are in the pipeline to be completed and how many have been completed? Okay, fine. So I will, through the chair, if that's okay, officers.
Yeah, sure.
Dave.
Chris.
Just one of you though, please. Whoever is the best placed person to answer that question, please go for it.
So in terms of where we are the programmes, because the Popular started the programme first. So I think from memory, Popular have delivered something like 240 odd homes, social LER homes up to this point. I've got from the in-house team 349 actually on site, and they'll start to deliver later on this year into next year. And I think Popular will probably get another 150 already on site as well. I think it's roughly those quantum numbers, I think.
So it's 489 on site across 7 sites right now.
Thank you. Councillor, do you have a supplementary? No? Does any other member have a question at this time? I'm going to go to Councillor Rush and then Councillor Rush.
Thank you, Chair. Leading on to Councillor Tawanev's question, with regard, for example, Popular Living, we know Grange Road is now completed. The residents have started to move into it, and that's probably been the last 2.5 months, I'm guessing, since it was completed. Is it now fully occupied?
I will have to pass to Deborah.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
That was very quick. It's the type of answer I like. Thank you, Deborah. Do you have a supplementary?
No.
No? Councillor Morris?
Going back to page 35 of finance, paragraph 320, it says the remaining elements of the programme are supported by the general fund through the acquisitions programme targeted to offset the cost of temporary accommodation. Do you have an estimate of how much is the offset?
Assume that's Dave.
Dave.
Yeah.
I'm sure to be, is that 3.2, 3.20?
Yeah, on
The
the
actual identified
page.
financial capacity to deliver must support that. The remaining elements of the programme are supported by the general fund through the acquisition programme. So we're currently experiencing a unprecedented increase in the demand for temporary accommodation. It's the perfect storm, as you're aware of the number of people who have been evicted and we can't help them out. They're gone to our homelessness list. And consequently, the rising demand for TA is certainly outstripping our acquisitions programme, and we're having to look at options for how we can improve supply. So at the moment, it's actually outstripping it, unfortunately, which is putting the burden on the council.
Which is probably expected.
Did you ask for a figure?
I asked for a figure.
You did, didn't you?
Yes, but that was an assumption that that offset was going to be positive, not it will cost us more negative. But
once again, if you don't mind, Chair, through which I'll give you that figure of where we are with our current TA figure, which is increasing at the moment.
Okay, but you don't have the figure now.
Chair, if I could just add in, if you look at Appendix 2, it actually shows you per scheme what the estimated general fund saving would be per annum per scheme.
Okay.
Is that a question?
No, he does what the offset will be.
Sorry, I don't understand that.
Do you want to explain yourself a bit better? Because he doesn't understand.
so when I saw the finance, what I saw was that we were going to attempt through the acquisitions programme to offset the costs that it costs the council. It's a temporary accommodation programme. In essence, it seemed like we were going to make savings to the cost of the general fund via savings made through temporary accommodation, which seemed unlikely.
Yes, so obviously having to house people in an expensive hotel accommodation is a high cost. So obviously what we're looking to do and put a business case for making an acquisition is that we can factor in how we're actually making savings from the general fund for not having to pay those very high emergency accommodation costs. The issue is finding enough affordable, well, okay, not affordable in that sense, but good deals to actually buy new stock in, to actually then offset what we would be paying and are paying in emergency accommodation. So this is a problem that whole London is experiencing at the moment, that so many people on temporary accommodation are going into emergency accommodation, but we can't find the supply. So it's not just building new properties, it's actually being able to buy properties. That's what our acquisition programme is, of which we've got a manifesto commitment to do at least 500 in this term.
Okay, can I just ask, obviously on 3.20, just that we get maybe a written answer to that, because it says the remaining elements of the programme are supported by the general fund, so that assumes financial support, yeah? Through the acquisitions programme targeted to offset, we get that, because in the table at the back, we've got your estimated general fund savings. Can you just get back to us and let us know what the remaining elements are going to cost and what you estimate them to cost through the general fund? Is that okay? Just give it to us now, just get back to us at some point, because I think we've gone.
Although I don't know where we're going to be in 3 years' time with the amount of demand risk for temporary accommodation.
Okay, maybe we could do for the next year?
Okay, just on an annual basis.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Paid, yeah.
Is that agreeable?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. I can't remember if that was your second question or your first.
That was my second question.
Okay. Does anyone else have a question at this time? No other member? Councillor Rush.
The right one to answer. But in regards to temporary accommodation, obviously some people have been in those homes for 3 to 5 years for obvious reasons, but some people could actually be happy in that temporary accommodation and like where they've lived because they feel like they're in a community there. Sometimes has the question been asked with those temporary accommodation people that have been in them long term, that do they actually want to stay in it and be in it on the permanent rather than...
I'm actually going to step in on that question only because you're not here to talk about specifically TA. I understand that some of what we're talking about does affect it because they've housed people in it as TA, but that's not specifically what we're here to talk about, to be fair. So unfortunately, I've got to be fair and I do have to rule that out because that's not typically what we're here to talk about. Do you have another question that pertains to this specifically? No, that's fine. Does any other member have a question at this time? No? Okay. Do you have any closing remarks on this item?
Only to invite all members of this commission over to Carpenters and to have a site visit, and we can talk you through various elements just by way of just illuminating the proposition on what's been planned. It is pretty impressive.
Okay, thank you very much. Have you noted that? Yep. Our invitation?
Yes.
Good. Make you chase it up when it doesn't come, so we make sure that we hold them to it. I do have one question, actually. In terms of the viability that's coming by the end of the year to Cabinet, is that just for phase one, or will that be for all the phases together, or are you just going to do phase one?
So, Dave, through the chair.
Yeah, so we've approved, in Carpenters, we've got plan permission for phase one, which is James Riley Point.
Yeah.
And we just need to get the final figure for the contract sum to actually do the refurbishment of James Riley Point, which is early into the new year.
So it will just be for phase one?
Just for phase one, yes.
No worries.
The progressive design, Opto Progressive Designs with us for phase two. And we've got the overarching planning application for the whole estate.
Yeah.
So there's a number of moving parts for the different phases, but we're all progressing now to timescale for the delivery on the whole estate.
And when would you expect phase two to come forward?
That's Deborah, question.
So it's back to that chair the risk management point. So we'll be working it up intensively over the next 18 months whilst we get the permission for the master plan. And at that point, it's the state of the market and what we do next will be clearer in terms of timescales.
Thank you. And that's refreshingly honest, because that was my last question to you. You actually said something earlier. You said that you'll proceed when rates allow you to lock in for the long term. Considering that we're going into a period that could be recession, we're in high inflation now. We don't know how long this is going to last for. Do you have any sort of guidance from your board, from the people that you use to look at the market and give you the analysis as to how long we could be in this sort of position where we have to hold off until the rates allow?
Okay.
So,
sorry?
You should charge him for that advice.
That's So what I can say is I've spoken to, I was at the time of 2008, I just stopped being the strategy director for the Barclay Group and gone back into central government. So two things are really clear, that one is that there will be recessions over the 50-year life of, that's why we're taking a long view, because we're riding out those recessions rather than being subjected to them. And the second is, every time since the Second World War that there has been a recession, there will have to be some kind of help for the construction industry, because it's 12.5% of the economy. So timing is absolutely critical, and our job is to design really good schemes and then be fleet of foot when construction prices come back down, and when there is other, in 2008 it was called Kickstart, but when there is other money available, so we can take full advantage of it.
Okay, so you don't have any idea as to how long that could be, in terms of how long the delay could be till things get back to a favourable condition?
I would say that the good thing in our favour, no, I don't think it's going to be years, because the entire rest of the economy is predicated on construction. So central government, if this looks like a recession and interest rates are going up, they will have to intervene. Otherwise, it will infect the rest of the economy. So again, history tells us that you're not going to be mothballing for a long number of years.
Okay, and does any member have a question at this time? You do?
Yeah, I've just got this.
Yeah, go for it.
You can overrule it if it's irrelevant, but I was just thinking, because obviously housing, other aspects of housing. So lovely that there's all these wonderful new high standard new builds coming, but what about the existing stock, some of which is like really in bad need of repair, like really falling apart and stuff?
You're right, I am going to rule it out of order. I'm sorry.
It's
Affordable homes, regeneration.
housing.
I do normally.
Programme.
Yeah, I normally.
Yeah.
And we can talk about that when the lead member for housing comes, because that would be under his purview along with his officers, etc. I do have one question. You talk about great risk management. A lot of money, as I said before, has been borrowed. Capital slippage. While we're waiting for the market to become favourable, what's the mitigation that's going to be put in place to ensure that we're not paying excess interest charges over that period? And Deborah said it's not going to be years. Hopefully that's the case. But what mitigation have we put in place to make sure that we're not lumbered with that debt over that period, paying the interest?
Really simply, we've taken on debt that we can service. So the schemes that are in play at the moment, we can service the debt. And we would, as is normal, we go back to the council with a really detailed viability assessment before pressing go on any new site. And those sites are assessed with sensitivity analysis, and they do test what happens with economic shocks.
Okay, great. So basically, we don't borrow until you're ready to go, So we shouldn't have capital just sitting around, slipping all over the place. No. Okay.
Exactly.
Great. Thank you so much for that. Councillor Charlie, yeah.
Sorry, just on that mention of viability, who does the viability assessments?
Good question.
So we have an in-house team that puts those together in our finance department, working with the development department. Then there's a series of gateways, and they get tested by our board, and then they go, they're always shared iteratively with the council's finance department, but the council's finance department also go through them with a fine-tooth comb.
So there's no external scrutiny of the viability assessments? It's all in-house, and then because the council's the owner, so there's no external scrutiny?
There is external scrutiny. So in the, Dave, you have appointed rightly separately external scrutiny of the carpenters.
Yes, sorry. So this is our day job. So Deborah and her team are providing and developing viability studies to show that they can deliver this, and they're doing that as part of their job. We do a check as client, so we employ our own people to actually check on those. So that's where the scrutiny comes. There's no need for external, because this is our business. There is an external issue when you look at planning. So if you're looking at a private sector planning application and you do a viability, they produce a viability, we employ consultants externally to do a test and scrutinise the viability assessments done by private sector developers. But that's for planning, Section 106 negotiations. This is actually part of the process of development. Popular undertaking.
Surprisingly, so.
Just to give you more comfort, though, it isn't a case of you pull a figure out the air. You've got benchmarks and surveyors work to their precedents about values, and can you bring in quantity surveyors, etc.
I totally understand that, and I'm not doubting the process. What I'm surprised about is that in any normal company, you have a very clear conflict of interest management. So I'm just kind of like, you're the long arm, you're also funding it, then you're getting reports back. So is there conflict?
To be fair, the scrutiny in-house is held by Conrad. So I'm the senior responsible officer for the client side for Populo, but Conrad actually sits on the shareholders board, and he brings his team in to actually look and scrutinise at the assumptions that Populo have made around their viability.
That's a financial viability.
Yes.
What about the overall scheme viability?
That's the last bite of the cherry, by the way, because I've given you latitude. No, you go ahead.
I don't see the difference between the financial viability and the financial viability of the scheme.
Okay.
You can explain what because I've let you ask the question. So what do you mean?
Well, surely, I mean, there's other viabilities like, is the project going to be accessible? Is it going to fit into the master plan? Or planning kind of aspect?
Yeah. I call those feasibilities rather than viabilities. Yes, sorry. So yeah, feasibility, yes. They obviously, Populo have to go through the planning system. So they're to and fro with the planning system to make sure that the scheme is feasible. They obviously do their own community consultation about how the scheme fits into a local area. So, all those are the corporate priorities that you associate with doing a development. Populo would be testing. And we as on the shareholders and me on the client side obviously want to show us examples that they're hitting the priorities.
So very quickly, Chair, I'd be happy to share the LLDC have their quality review panel. This is the London Legacy Development Corporation, and very happy to share the last review that they did of James Riley in phase 1 as an example of that scrutiny.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did anyone else have a question before we close off from this area? No? You've all had your fill? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Greatly appreciated. We're going to be moving on to our next agenda item, which is agenda item number 6, which is Air Quality Action Plan, Review of Performance. I'm delighted to welcome to this meeting, Mayor of Newham, Roxanne Fias, Councillor John Whitworth, Commissioner for Air Quality and Climate Emergency, Dave Hughes, Corporate Director of Inclusive Economy, Jane Custance. Oh, there you are, Jane. Hello, good evening. Jane Custance, Director of Planning, and Nick Marks, Environmental Control Officer, Planning and Development. So do you have a presentation for this, or who's going to speak to this? You've got up to 5 minutes.
I'm going to say, I was hoping that myself and John Whitworth could just make up to 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's fine, as long as it's combined.
And jump into questions. So colleagues, just wanted to set some of the scene stuff, and then I'm going to pass on to John Whitworth. So in essence, this Air Quality Action Plan, you'll note in the it was adopted by the council in 2019. Prior to that, the of the council's Air Quality Action Plan was 2004, and we very much response to both the public health crisis that has manifested in this borough as consequence of air, and what that has led to. For instance, 4,500 hospital, over 100 people now dying prematurely, directly attributable to vehicle fumes, as evidenced by Public Health England. Alongside climate emergency, we obviously elevated air quality as a major priority for us, and it sits, yes, within the broader realm of our general, our emergency response to climate, the climate emergency. It's important to situate this in the context of that background history. So there's been quite a considerable period within the council where not much focus in this area has been achieved, and we're driving this forward through a multiplicity of different instruments.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, just to take
that up on the evolution of this air quality action plan. It came at a time just after there was a change in the, I would say, the direction of the council. And it also came at a time when there was a renewed interest in climate emergency and the danger to the biosphere of the planet, which periodically there's a resurgence of interest, thankfully. And we were one of the councils, one of the early councils that brought in the climate emergency. And it was motivated, well, partly for the global picture, because we realised that actually Newham, as the Mayor said, that the Newham was actually slipped far behind many councillors because it had been left to slide for some 15 years. And we realised we had a lot to make up to play our part, because it only the defence of the environment only works if each plays its part. We realised that we had to do our bit, and also things we introduced might, in some respects, show a good example to others. And for Newham itself, we were particularly concerned about health, because we know that Newham is a borough of multiple deprivation, health being one of them, and of course the living conditions, environment are the key factors of health, and particularly for children, because we know that the poor air quality affects the children's lungs more particularly than adults. And so we did things like introduce monitors for diffusion tubes outside all the schools. So we knew what the quality of air, had a better idea of the quality of air in front of the schools. And that led us to the school streets scheme, which we brought in, which didn't exist before this time. And that, importantly, has shown actually to make some difference when at the time, if a school is in a quiet school street, there is evidence now to show that at entrance and leaving times, the nitrogen dioxide levels have fallen. So we've had to focus on health and the general state of the environment, and we've got to take this forward. We need, apart from what you can see in the, you've read the Air Quality Action Plan and the Air Quality Annual Status Report, we want to step up engagement with schools to raise awareness among, or increase awareness, there is some, children, and engagement of schools in active travel. We also, of course, one of the key things of this is to raise awareness in the whole population of the need to protect the environment and encourage people to shift from the use of motor vehicles to active travel. And we do know that this is a hard task, so we have to engage and persuade the bulk of the population to be, not to change overnight, but to realise the importance of this shift. And what we've done, we have introduced measures, of course, to reduce, increase incentives to move away from motor vehicles with the polluting vehicle parking charge, for example, and indeed the low traffic neighbourhoods. At the same time, offering more possibilities for people to use electric vehicles with the introduction of charging points, and turn to cycling with more cycle hangers installed all over the borough and response to need. And there, of course, we need actually get ahead of demand rather than just respond to it. So there's some of the things that we've brought in the last 4 years. We've also, well, recently and currently we're having to respond to something that we feared but hope wouldn't happen, and that's the Silvertown Tunnel. So we've got to direct now our attention to the strict monitoring, adherence to the terms of the planning agreement, and also to have input, strong input in what the tunnel will be used, how it will be used, and how it will cater for active travel once it's completed. So there are some of the things that we have been doing and that we're looking to do in the near future. And I think we can perhaps pass over to questions now.
Thank you very much. Does any member? Oh, okay. I'll go to Councillor Godfrey.
Thanks. Okay, so guys, I know I'm looking at the air quality annual status report, and specifically, I'm looking at page 13, which is page 105 of your pack. Just wanted to quickly say, I found this update really difficult to read, and I think that there are things that you guys can do to make it easier to read and easier to understand, and I'd be happy to talk about that at a later date. But just quickly, that table 13 is showing, I think, 137 monitoring sites, and the monitoring of nitrogen dioxide, micrograms of nitrogen dioxide per cubic square meter of air.
Millimetre.
Sorry, millimetre of air went down in around 80% of those sites. So 80% of the sites is great. That's really, really good that you are showing improvement in there from 2020. However, or it stayed the same, sorry. So 80% stayed the same or went down. However, in 26 of the monitored sites in this table, nitrogen dioxide levels have gone up. Now that's normally by only 1, 2 or 3 micrograms. Sometimes it's by a little more. It's gone up. What's the review process that you guys are going to take to see why that happened at these sites?
Okay, I'm going to first respond to your initial point about the presentation of this report, and just by way of explanation, this report follows a template that the Greater London Authority require us and other local authorities in London to follow and produce separately as part of a wider campaign around climate emergency. We are currently working through a campaign plan with assets in order to promote the achievements that we're making and the progress that we're making across a whole number of activities and interventions that contribute to air quality. In terms of the sites that you've specified, I'll pass over to John, but maybe given the technical nature of this, officers, but I imagine that those are areas of the borough where we have limited control in terms of particular roads, etc. But if it's okay through the chair, if I can invite officers, Nick in particular, to answer that part of the question or statement.
Yep, sure. 2 minutes, please.
Yep. What we can do is that figures are trending downwards. The difficulty with air quality is that the air environment is a big thing. We look for overall trends throughout the borough. Small increases and small decreases in individual sites aren't particularly significant in themselves. We can have a look at the particular sites where there has been a small increase, say 2 to 3 micrograms, but it's unlikely that we're going to be able to find anything specific regarding those sites that are different from other bits of the boroughs. You know, the pollution disperses quickly throughout the area. And what we try to look at is the overall trends of air pollution in the borough and throughout London. And the trends are going downwards, but maybe not as fast as we would like. And in particular, considering the fact that more and more research finds that lower levels of air pollution than the government's national air quality standards are actually still harmful to health. But we can have a look at the specific sites that you mentioned, but I'm not anticipating being able to find anything particular that makes those sites different.
Okay. So if I can come in, Chair. So you said rates aren't going down as fast as you would like. what would you like the speed of them to go down? What would you like that to be?
The dream ticket is there's the World Health Organization standards for air pollution, and it would be nice if London could meet or start approaching them. The things that this council can do are quite limited. Again, that it's not as say if take an example of noise. If you've got a noisy factory, a noisy event, you know where it is. It's limited. Noise only travels a certain distance. The difficulty with air pollution is it just goes into the atmosphere and smears out. A lot of the stuff we can deal with pollution in smaller areas, and the example of the low traffic neighborhoods and the school streets are a good example where interventions by my colleagues in highways have produced reductions in air pollution in those areas. But the big picture is both national and international. Air travels about the place, and it's difficult to hang things on Newham predicated actions.
Okay. Councillor. No. Councillor Corbett.
Yeah, sort of building on that, because it's the difficult thing is we're trending down a little bit as well, but I'm wondering how much that might be because the last 2 years we've had COVID and lots of people have stayed at home and not driven the cars. So lots of questions, I suppose, really about the decrease, which can sound, well, from the tables I looked at, it can sound big to say there's a 40% reduction, but what you're talking about is a move from a 31 down to 26. It's like 8 points, which is 40% of 31. But when you look at the graph, you think it looks like a tiny little progression downwards, which my worry would be that really at the moment, that decrease in the last 2 years is primarily down to people driving less because of COVID. Do you think that could be the case? And sort of building on from Lewis's point, that maybe the increase in certain places, main roads that we can't have LTNs are because there's more traffic on those because they're avoiding the healthy school streets. So we're just moving the problem about, not actually kind of reducing the problem, just moving it.
Yeah.
Who's taking that?
If I may, Nick, and then maybe you can come into some of the sort of technical specifics. But in large part, it echoes what Nick has said. I would concur, but Nick may, being the technical expert, I can't imagine COVID-19 and people working from home not having an impact on these numbers. We are part of we operate under with a regional authority in a global city that is London, that has introduced ULEZ, and the impact of that is yet to be seen, and that may, in future year reports, show something. But fundamentally, ultimately, we are going to have to get to the modality shift that has been set out in the Mayor of London's Sustainable Transport Strategy. By 2042, 80% of journeys in London are done by walking and cycling. You're absolutely right. There needs to be an absolute shift in terms of people's behaviour. How soon can we get there? Make it difficult for car drivers? That is one of the areas being pursued by the Mayor through the ULEZ, because they need to be contributing some of the old vehicle cars. It's pretty challenging, to say the least, to be introducing those school-friendly streets, low-traffic neighbourhoods, but they are actually having a positive impact. If you look at the cross-boundary one that we've done with Waltham Forest, not only has it had an impact in terms of vehicle reduction, but again, in line with what Nick has said, you're not able to narrow in that this percentage of air quality improvement has been a consequence of this particular low traffic neighbourhood scheme, but it's also had other corresponding benefits, i.e. reduction in fly tipping in those areas. But on your broad point, we do have to do something more fundamental. It's the reason why we're opposed to the Silvertown Tunnel. And through the chair,
you're going to have a minute.
Technical.
Yeah, because that's about all I can give you at this point.
Okay. The first, yes, COVID had an enormous effect. We noticed it on all real-time monitors as traffic fell off, air pollution levels fell off. That the trouble is that traffic levels are now about where they were before COVID. So we're having issues with the pollution is in effect rebounding. There are some positive things, is that the GLA's ULEZ does seem to have had some positive effects in Newham, and the GLA has produced a report showing that, and that can be shared with the committee members should they be interested. With respect to the displacement of air pollutions outside low traffic neighbourhoods, I don't know if we've done any studies ourselves, but studies on other low traffic neighbourhoods hasn't actually shown that displacement activity. There doesn't seem to be any increase in air pollution on adjoining roads outside low traffic neighbourhoods.
Okay, Jefferson.
Well, I think Councillor Ken Penton, not here, has pointed out that he's seen documentation to show that there's been some increase on some of those outside roads, like Forest Lane. But anyway, supplementary, which is kind of like an observation as well, because the behaviour change is huge. So I feel that what we need to do as a borough, which the whole country should be doing, is not trying to say to people, you shouldn't drive a car. We should just say you should have a vehicle that's non-pollutant. And the issue for us in the borough is that a lot of people have got very low income, so they've often got very old cars which are polluting. They can't afford to really change those cars. So my point would be, why are we not trying to build on John's point as well, which was increase the incentive to move away from petrol cars. For me at the moment with LTNs, what we're doing is we're just disincentivizing people from driving those petrol cars, not incentivizing them to get an alternative vehicle or even get an electric bike or whatever. So I just feel like, is there not anything we can do to make it got a low income who maybe are reliant on a car to be able to swap that for an electric one?
Thank you.
It's outside the jurisdiction. Okay, it's outside the jurisdiction of a local authority, and I would counter argue, I don't think it's best place for a local authority to be using resourcing at a time of constraint when we've got growing pressures in adult social care, children's services, and the whole caboodle to enable people to buy electric cars. I suspect the market forces will lead to a point where the price points for electrical cars will become even more affordable. I think more broadly, we need to reconceptualise modern urban living in a global city like London and in an urban authority like Newham, which is why we're pursuing through our placemaking approach, 15-minute neighbourhoods, why we're looking at a more diligent approach around how we craft our local economy so that we have jobs that are of high income and skilled for our residents to benefit. But I wouldn't subscribe to what you've set out, regretfully.
Yeah, I wasn't actually, just to clarify, I wasn't suggesting that we paid for it as a borough, but that potentially it's like recognising what the illness is and prescribing a relevant, acceptable remedy, whereas I think just trying to expect people to have a massive change where they're just not using cars whatsoever is just unrealistic.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to come to a member in a minute. Obviously, we've got built infrastructure that you're working on, cycle lanes, etc., all of that stuff. But it's funny because somebody on the screen, I think it was Nick, mentioned ULEZ. And I was just making a list of all the things to do with air quality that residents see. So healthy school streets, LTNs, emissions charges on the parking permits, all of these things have something in common. There's a cost attached to them and it's borne by the residents, whether it be ULEZ from the Mayor of London, or it be the healthy school streets if you drive through it, or the LTNs if you drive through it, or the emissions charge on your parking permit. What other actions are we taking as a council that don't incur a charge on our residents directly? To tackle air quality, of course.
Well, everything we do as a council has a cost implication because we have to pay for staff.
I mean, the residents are...
All material.
Yeah, but my point is...
that will come in part from an element of council tax and whatever other grants. You know, we invest in cycle lanes that, yes, are in part drawn down from road tax that is charged to car drivers, but that's a benefit for cyclists, which we do not charge. We have brought in equity in a system, absurd that it was prior to 2018, where we were basically, we were incentivizing car drive use by giving them a first parking permit free. And the majority of residents were subsidising car drivers. The majority of residents in a borough of amongst the most low income. That's wrong. And we were charging people that wanted to use our bike hangers more money, for use of a bike hanger. I don't think that's right or equitable.
Okay, so just to be clear, in terms of my question, it was what other measures are you taking that the residents don't directly pay for? So the reason why I say that is because all of those residents will already pay council tax. That's a given. Any of these additional measures that they get caught up in, whether it's because they drive through an LTN or because they drive down a healthy school street, or because they pay for a parking permit, that is on top of their council tax already. So my question was, what other things is happening in the council that is paid for out of their council tax money that we're doing outside of cycle lanes? Is there anything else going on?
That contributes to air quality.
Absolutely.
Right. Our investment in parks, tree planting, green in the borough, our approach to supporting and enabling the biodiversity across, the Lower Lee Valley, our investments in Cody Docks, supporting them so that we've got these beautiful spaces that our residents can enjoy. There's a lot, I would argue.
Okay, so green in the borough is one that I had down, by the way, because I've seen the work the councillor Ass has done on tree planting, etc. What about things like carbon capture and all that sort of stuff? Can that be done on a localised basis, or is that something that's got to be done nationally by national government?
Dave Hughes, would you like to answer that?
Oh, sorry, Jane.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Jane. I'm so engrossed in the room. Apologies. Bad chairing from me. Did you want to complete the points that were made previously?
No, completely support what the mayor says, but I was just going to say, we do collect community infrastructure levy from new developments, and that's been directed to things like the North Village Road scheme that's reducing the width of it to provide cycling and walking facilities. And then in new developments, we've got Section 106, where we're providing, cycle hangers, car-free developments, and the Strategic Development Committee in particular is always keen to make sure that we provide more than just a policy compliant situation. So all of that would be borne by the developer and not current residents or future residents. I think Nick wants to come in as well.
Yeah, literally for a minute, Nick, because...
Okay, and then in which case I can add to Jane's active travel plans being put in through the major developments, the amount of money that the council is spending in electrifying its own fleet. We are vehicle owners, and fleet management is changing over to electric vehicles, which are much less polluting. I shall shut up there.
Thank you very much. I can't take you, Dave. Okay, go on, councillor. How can I resist? Go ahead.
Just to come back on your observation about the cost of residents. I mean, it is largely to the cost of residents who are motor car users.
Yeah, of course.
And so which is at less than half the households in the borough. And I think it comes back to what we're trying to do. I mean, modern cities and modern life has been largely developed over previous decades to cater for the motorist and for motor travel. And we are now trying this modal shift, which of course is a huge task. But what we're doing is part of that.
Good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Members, Councillor Chadha, and then I'll come over here.
Actually, sorry, I've completely forgot my question.
Okay, no worries. Councillor Morris.
So page 69. It says we will maintain a dedicated airport monitoring officer to ensure that London City Airport improved air quality monitoring strategy is functioning as agreed. This will be facilitated by regular meetings and an annual report. So can we have a status on the air quality monitoring strategy?
That's Jane Custance, Chief Planner.
Yeah, so we have a air quality. We have a London City Airport monitoring officer, Duncan Isles, and there's the City Airport development programme, which is what the kind of name for the kind of overarching permission for the airport is, and that has various requirements and conditions within it about what they're doing for air quality monitoring, and they provide regular reports to us to show that they're complying. So they've done things like electrifying their ground fleet. They do a lot in terms of travel planning to make sure that their staff are getting to work sustainably. And there's kind of future programs like looking at hydrogen powered airplanes, electric planes, and a new air fleet, which would be more sustainable than what they've got at the moment. So we do have a report on that. So if the Commission wants me to circulate that after the meeting, then I'm more than happy to do that.
Thank you very much. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes. So also in the packet it says facilitated by regular meetings. Is that how the airport monitoring officer is? Basically, are the regular meetings the London City Airports Consultative Committee?
No, that's separate. So under the planning conditions, there is a officer that sits within planning that undertakes the monitoring against the conditions of the planning application as approved back in the day. And then there is a separate consultative body that the city airport itself has established, and it engages and invites residents from both Newham, Greenwich, and a couple of other local authorities, and that meets quarterly. And there are 3 LBN representatives that go there that are member representatives from the local wards.
And Duncan is funded by Section 106 payments from the airport, so not from the council. We have quarterly meetings with them to make sure that they adhere to their conditions. But Duncan is that is his job, so he's holding them to account on a daily basis.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Godfrey, and then I'll go to Councillor.
Sure. So sorry, because I want to turn back to my very boring table, which is on page 13. The assessment and page, check my notes. 105 of your pack. So looking at this, I take what you said, Nick, about looking at things in the longer term and kind of understanding trends. And I did notice that between 2018, when Councillor Fiaz became Mayor Fiaz, and 2021, the three biggest drops in nitrogen dioxide occurred in three areas. That's NHM1, Temple Mill Lane, where there's, I believe there's the Temple Mill Lane bus gate, and where there's a number of significant investments in cycling and walking infrastructure. There was also NHM 16, which is opposite 99 Leighton Road, which is the main road that goes just outside of the Chobham LTN. And finally, NHM 20 Canning Town Roundabout, which was subject to a number of improvements which have made walking and pedestrian access better there. What is it about those sites that you think has made this massive improvement in nitrogen dioxide?
May I just capture the first one? Was it
NHM1 Temple Mill Lane.
The bus gate.
Mill, and then the 16 was Canning.
That's 99 Leighton Road.
Leighton Road. Okay.
It's got a no entry sign, right?
That's just by Chobham Road, which is.
I know which one it is.
Got no entry on it.
It's
High Road.
No, that's Leighton Road.
Yeah, I know which one it. Through the chair, if I can pass over to Nick, who knows the technical back.
The differences in air pollution are very strongly controlled by the amount of traffic. Canning Town roundabout is probably a case in point, is that pollution levels fall off very sharply as with distance from the road curbside. Any change that we have in the distance that the further away people are from the area of pollution, the less pollution they're going to get. By the time you're about 50 meters away from a pollution source, it's down to background level. Canning Town was a change where traffic was moved away from people. There's cycle lanes in the way, so the monitor stayed in the same, but the actual traffic has moved away from monitor. We were trying to keep the monitor in the same place at the same time. The others, I suspect, are to do with actual traffic reduction measures. You reduce if you reduce the flows of traffic past an air quality monitor, the level of pollution next to that monitor will go down. It is just that strongly linked, and it's why things like the London Mayor's desire for a very high level of sustainable active travel, which has other advantages for health as well, will do a major good for air quality throughout London and Newham in particular.
Okay, thank you very much.
I have a quick supplementary. Sorry? I do have a quick supplementary. Yeah. Which is just focusing on NHM 16, which is opposite 99 Leighton Road. My colleague, Councillor Corbyn, was saying that she thought that LTNs might redirect traffic onto main roads. So you would expect, perhaps, if Councillor Corbyn was right on this, that actually the nitrogen dioxide levels on 99 Leighton Road would be higher because of that LTN. But that's not the case, and I was wondering if you could explain why that is.
I don't think that I do not know whether traffic counts have been taken before and after on Leighton Road. It's something that I would simply have to refer to my colleagues in highways. That other studies of which I am aware, because I'm interested in air quality, is that has been brought up on a number of times relating to other traffic reduction schemes in other areas, and the displacement doesn't seem to take place. It's that it is an imagined effect that doesn't actually occur.
It's an evaporation.
That with all this lot, we're trying to discourage car use. We're not trying to move people to drive somewhere differently. We're asking them to think maybe there is a better way of getting round. Could we walk? Could we ride a bike? Could we take the bus? All of which are better things to do and are filling with overall improving the environment in London widely. Sorry.
Thank you very much. And I must commend Councillor Godfrey on so skillfully extracting the answer that he sought. Yes.
I just wanted to touch on one element of the sites that you had identified or drew our attention to, the Canning Town one. And the reason I wanted to draw on that was this is a prime example of how placemaking can have such a demonstrable impact, because the site that you're talking about actually includes the Terry Sphinx, and it was as part of the wider Canning Town regeneration, you know, notwithstanding what one may think about what was agreed, you know, prior to 2018 with regards to that particular development. That is a prime example of what can be achieved. And it also highlights the importance of having that stitching together of the highways piece with regeneration as we approach and think about placemaking. So I just wanted to commend you for your diligence and looking at that as well. That was pretty impressive.
Well done, Councillor Godfrey.
To reply on that because
We're asking them the question.
No, but it's a comment because it's a specific.
I'll let you come in later, but unfortunately we don't get right of reply, unfortunately. Sorry about that. I'm going to go to Councillor Rusk. You've been waiting for.
Basically, that's why.
Thank you, Chair. I was just waiting.
It's okay.
Going back to school safe streets and obviously air quality and private motor vehicle use. Obviously monitoring is going on, and obviously part of the problem is lots of parents are still driving their children to school on a fairly regular basis. It could be partly because our schools are gaining a much better reputation. School people are coming in from outside the borough. They could be dropping two or three of their children off in different parts of the borough, which could then make it really difficult not to use public transport other than private vehicles, because getting three different kids into three different schools all could become impossible. Going back to my real question really is, could we almost question parents when they're dropping children off around the various schools? A simple question, how far have you travelled? If they've travelled under a mile, for example, obviously in the borough and even in the ward, the supplementary question, have you ever thought about a different form of transport to come in with, to drop your children off?
Yeah.
Which is something good for it, explain why it's good for them and the air quality and the health aspects as well.
Yeah, I think you make such an important point, and it's something that myself and John have been talking about of late, not least, you know, because of the important role that the school communities play. Every single school is required to have a travel plan. And I think we're doing better in our engagement with schools in terms of, one, helping them review their travel plans and adopting a really proactive school community culture of elevating active travel. I'm seeing more and more of that. And then that's led on to the subsequent attaching of a school-friendly street scheme. Most of our schools now want and are clamouring to have a friendly school street scheme. And John, I don't know whether you want to kind of talk about some of the stuff we've been thinking about with regards to engaging with the teaching unions as well, and their role in supporting this.
Yes, we want to engage schools and including the unions to actually look at what the schools are doing to encourage active travel and enthusiasm for that among their students. And we want really to map what is happening already and to have good practice shared, but also to see what how many schools are providing cycle training, how many schools have got cycling clubs, how many schools have got an organised walking or cycling to schools scheme. And basically, we want to see what schools are really making an effort, and those that are not so interested, if we can get them more involved, and at the same time, increase awareness. There is some, but increase awareness among young people, and to really get them to not to be focused on having a motor car when they get older, for them to think that cycling is a normal mode of travel for shorter distances and public transport for longer distances. So this is the kind of thing we want to engage the schools with.
Thank you. Councillor Zubair?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll come back to the Councillor Zubair.
My question is for the Newham school average by ward, page number 110. Paragraph is the expected to the trade was the East Ham Road, where there's a 2 schools, special schools, with Kensington Primary School. Presented an overall increase in construction. So the reason behind this is not yet understood. Special school is one of the minority of schools in Newham, located by the busy road junction between the B165 and A117. Which likely the school which is split on each side of the road. The majority of the school in Newham are located on Residence Street, which construction closer to background constructions. So just I want to know, so why?
Was it page 117?
110.
110.
Look at the printed, yeah, that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, 110. It talks about the increase at Plashet School and Kensington Primary.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
It would be helpful for Nick.
Yeah, that's fine, because Nick wanted to come in anyway, didn't you, Nick? So if you could do 2 things at once, if that's
Well,
okay.
I'll do one thing at once, but the trouble is I'm working to a different document. I'll look at the original document. I would like to draw the meeting's attention to the STARS scheme, which I think is about item 13 on the Air Quality Action Plan. That's a scheme run by, promoted by Transport for London, that encourages sustainable transport by pupils to schools. My colleague Sue Gray in Highways is the lead officer of that, and it's an award scheme where schools can be gold, silver and bronze. And if you have a look at the Air Quality Action Plan, you'll have details of the schools that have achieved gold, silver and bronze. It's down there in the Air Quality Action Plan. So yes, it is actually being addressed as regards.
Sorry, Nick, one second. Before I let you come on and address the other point, we have 5 minutes until the scheduled end of our meeting. So I'm going to need to extend the standing orders up to a maximum of half an hour. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is that agreed?
Okay.
Okay. Now, Nick, you can carry on. We've taken care of that.
Right. What was the second point, and can you give it the title?
Do you want me to read it? Yeah. So it's,
where it is in the actual Air Quality Action Plan? I don't have your bundle, you see.
Figure 1. So figure 1, 3-year trend at all schools, NHMS 1 to NHMS 99, average by ward. Essentially, what the council is asking about, I'll read it to you if that helps. The exception to the trend was at East Ham North, where 2 schools, Plashet School and Kensington Primary School, presented an overall increase in concentrations. The reasoning behind this is not yet understood. I understand it says it's not yet understood, but I think he's asking you to understand. Can you shed any light onto it, please?
Honest, no, without looking at the stuff. I'm gonna. If you
Page 18.
Small page number 18 on your document. It should be
page number 18.
Yeah.
Yeah. On our. Yeah. Okay.
It's landscape view.
Okay, just.
So it would be after.
Yeah, I'm just. I was.
Yeah.
Okay. While you look for it, does any other person, mayor or politician or officer have anything they want to say about that?
No, I'm going to lean into the expert.
No worries. Dave, no.
Okay,
No.
I'm just.
Okay, we'll wait. No worries.
Right, this is page 18.
Figure 1, 3-year trend at all schools.
Yeah, that's it. I'm just reading this now.
Sorry, and Nick, I think the
Yeah,
council
as I
was
said,
specifically.
that this one, I am not able to help the committee at this point. That my colleague Tim Baker, who actually did all these figures, will have a look at that.
We'll provide
If
written
at the time it says, it will say that is not understood. It may be that, all I can speculate is there's been an increase in traffic, but that is pure speculation on my part. I might not be able to give you a reason. I
No,
might not know.
Can we take it away and come back to you with an
Yeah.
answer if we can find one?
Yeah.
That's absolutely fine and acceptable. Just a very quick question. In these sorts of areas where it's difficult to understand, would you launch some sort of investigation in your area to say, okay, this is bucking the trend. Why is this bucking the trend?
If I may, it will be something that will be picked up by highways and the officer that leads on the school-friendly streets. And I know that in the context of all the schools in the borough, there are some that are constrained because of where they're located, and they're located by major roads, which makes the implementation of a school-friendly street scheme really difficult. And it may be the case that that is the issue also with Plashet, if you think about where Plashet is.
Yeah.
And through you, Chair, I think it's a really good point. And if we're looking at reviewing the air quality plan, then maybe that's something that we need to pick up, is a bit more, why are these things happening?
Okay, thank you very much.
The particular schools there, I believe, are on the road network, which we don't control.
Yeah.
Now
sorry,
we can't put in school streets or anything like that.
Nick, sorry, just quickly, we've moved on from that. So we've accepted the fact you're going to write to us. So I'm going to take another question just because of time. I'm going to go to Councillor Chadder, then I'll come to the men.
Just a couple of points. I'm going to say this because I say this every time somebody mentions placemaking. I don't think there's a linear answer to how placemaking works. So when we look at that Canning Town piece, it's commuters, it's residents, it's visitors, it's people passing through. So I think we have to be very specific when we talk about placemaking as essentially as who is and isn't involved in that creation of space. And the same applies to 15-minute neighbourhoods as well. But my question is to Councillor Whitworth. If I were to give you a magic wand and you've got next year, the consultation starting for 2024 onwards for the next incarnation of strategy, what would you like to see happen? And is there any scope to be really inventive? And I'm thinking in particular here about our relationship with TfL and our relationship with developers, where I know we've got some legislative levers that we can use through the strategic development frameworks, but is there anything else we can do, especially considering the amount of development activity that's going on in the borough, that makes sure that residents aren't impacted by adverse building conditions? So magic wand, blue sky thinking, what would you like to see happen?
Are you referring there to the construction?
I'm referring to construction as one feature of it, but more generally.
Yeah, well, we weren't going to talk about that specifically, but it is related, of course. But we do want to build, and Newham, we do want to build according to principles that create good insulation in the homes, the passive house inspiration.
Sorry, I was talking more about when development work is going on. So some of the construction activity that goes on and the pollution that.
Oh, about right. And you might be thinking of the 12 Trees estate, are you? Yes.
Mention it again, but yes.
Yeah.
Several of them.
Yeah. But I think we need, they are being monitored. We've had some results, haven't we? But I think we need to, be a bit more insistent on regular reports to us and also to the residents, because there are some real fears and also some rumours that create perhaps exaggerated fears.
Is that something that could be factored into the next strategy?
Okay, that's something to think about, yeah.
And in terms of TfL, what's our relationship like with TfL? Presumably for active travel, they need to be a critical partner to Centre as well.
Yeah. Well, we are getting their contribute. We are still waiting for their contribution, I believe, to cycling, aren't we? Can I refer to?
I don't think,
No,
Jane,
we haven't got a.
through the chair, we don't have an highways officer here to be
No,
able
we
to provide
haven't.
the.
But they are contributing to our cycling network, except we're still waiting for the money to come through.
And if I may add, in broad terms, obviously notwithstanding the Silvertown Tunnel issue and the frustration there with TfL, the TfL position that they're actually very positive given our ongoing commitment around active travel. And over recent years, this was pre-COVID-19, so as a consequence it paused. I did talk to the then commissioner, and it's been picked up with the new commissioner, about the importance of engaging with in diverse community contexts about the positive aspects of active travel, and they're really keen to pursue that. And we've got a meeting lined up in the next couple of months, which James Asser will lead. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I bring in the two councillors over there, I just want to bring your attention to page 10, or in our book, it's page 50 odd, page 53. Shows a map, modelled map of annual mean NO2 concentration in LB and Newham. I'm reading it right, it says from 2016. My first question is, if it is from 2016, do we have an updated version? And also from that, it says that essentially NO2 concentrations exceeding the national air quality objective for the protection of human health in the locality of all major roads in the borough, roads dominated by through traffic such as A13, A12, A406, expose a wider area of population to poor air quality. It sounds to me like we've got an A13, A12 and A406 problem, roads that we do not control, I understand. What mitigations are we putting in place as a borough to kind of try and shield our residents from the pollution that comes from those roads that come through the borough? Is there anything like green walls or any sort of foliage that we're putting up? Is there any sort of concerted plan to deal with those major arteries that are seeping pollution into our borough? Anybody?
Just in answer to the map, 2016, in a report that was published in 2019, there will be maps that wouldn't have been contained in the annual report 2021 because we're having to follow a template issued to us by the GLA. But we can get those over to you by the clerk, and in the campaign that I mentioned earlier, there will be much more graphical led comms assets. And then just again, in terms of mitigating measures, I can come back to you with writing through the chair because I'd need to speak to highways people, but more broadly, where we can green, we will green, because obviously the absorption potential of leaves, trees has an evidence base, and we'd like to do more of those in our wider public realm. So I can.
Yeah, I would welcome. Just a note to the clerk. In terms of that, my specific question is on the main through roads, A13, A12 and A406. I don't really need to know about anything else. What are the council's mitigations to date in regards to dealing with pollution that comes specifically from those roads? Yeah.
Chair.
Very much. Nick, because I'm going to get a written answer. Is it okay if I don't bring you in on this unless you can answer it now?
I can't answer that now, but I can answer the thing on the map.
Yeah, I'll get the written answer. On the map.
You can answer the map.
Oh, you can.
The map is supplied by the GLA. It's produced about once every 4 to 5 years.
That's fine. Thank you so much for that. We really appreciate it. Thank you. I'm going to move on. Councillor Morris?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I'm just going to refer you to page 64 of the report. And what I mentioned, specifically the second paragraph below the separated cycle and separated cycling. It says the council's local implementation transport plan sets out transport priorities and commitments to transport, so on and so forth. I caught my attention because in your entire report, it's the only time it mentions buses. And actually, when I did a word search on the report itself, it mentioned public transport 6 times, walking 25 times, and cycling 37 times. And actually, in your report, there's only 2 concrete actions that describe measures to improve public transport. That is to dedicate more road space to public transport, but also in conjunction with more cycling infrastructure. And then this one that says more bus stops. I guess I'm going to provide a comment, but also a question. My comment is that part of the modal shift, because TfL's on research shows this, is that people who drive won't necessarily cycle or walk automatically. It's actually a shift from driving to public transport, and a lot of people that take public transport are also more likely to shift to cycling and walking. And so that's my comment. My question is, what outputs could you provide to improve public transport infrastructure in the borough?
Okay, I'm going to pass over through the chair to Nick. Again, I would say that this is a highways question, because I would love to see a whole plethora of enhanced public transport connectivity in the borough, particularly the south, and buses, but it's outside of our control. And we make the arguments, but the TfL, yeah, it's determined by TfL.
Well, this Jane can answer this about.
Yeah, we'll come to Nick in a minute. But one thing I would like to raise, obviously, as part of this meeting, and we'll get your answer in a second, quite a few of the questions that members have asked have obviously gone to highways. And I think that's a bit of a failing on my part as chair as well as on the other side, that a lot of this is to do with highways in terms of air quality, you know, whether it be the cars, the bikes that people ride, et cetera, et cetera. Can we get today maybe a commitment between us that prior to meetings, we can work out exactly who should be here to answer what, you know, questions may come up, if that makes sense? Because it seems to me like a bit of a glaring error that we don't have anyone here from highways when air quality is all to do with all the stuff that happens on our roads.
Well, air quality is, I would concur, and I think that's something that needs to be tightened up in terms of the scrutiny engagement with the executive and sort of, you know, the lines of inquiries that we're presented. We can only work to what we're being asked because we're being presented lines of inquiry that point to a particular thing. And then
so that's a commitment we can meet together and we can put out. Fantastic. Do you want to go ahead?
I'll be very brief. There's things, but that highways are probably better placed to ask any questions on public transport than I can. The other thing is that the air quality action plan is a template document, and we keep as close as we can to the GLA template. And if the GLA template doesn't mention very much about buses, we don't, because we need to keep to a document that can be compared across the 33 London boroughs.
Through you, Chair, if I can just come in a little bit as well. It's kind of research has shown that people are more likely to stop driving if they can walk and cycle, because you're not bound by a timetable. So you're likely to get the most modal shift changes if you focus on those areas. But with TfL's financial difficulties, they have been trying to reduce the number of the frequency or the number of bus routes, and the council has worked quite hard to lobby them not to do that. And then we are working with TfL and other partners on public transport schemes like the extension of the DLR to Thamesmead. So it might not be in the document, but there is a wider piece of work where we are looking at public transport aside from active travel, i.e. cycling and walking.
Thank you very much. Okay. Councillor Godfrey, I'm kind of coming to you after.
Apologies, guys, because I'm going to refer you to my favourite table again, which table D on page 105. So notwithstanding what you've said about different fluctuations and looking for trend analysis, the top 3 worst performing performing monitoring sites, by which I mean the sites which registered the highest levels of nitrogen dioxide in 2021 were Bexon Arms in Newham Way, Plashet School, which we've talked about, and 290 to 292 Green Street. Now we've already talked about Plashet School. I think that's a really interesting one, but I took specific interest in NHM 13 because 290 to 292 Green Street is in the ward I represent. And I dived a bit deeper on it and I went to Appendix B, Table O on page 46 of the report and 138 of your pack, which is a monthly breakdown of the readings from those monitors. Now, I noticed that in August, there was a monitor reading of 19.5. Nick, that's hugely out of whack with the other months registered, which were around 48 and up to around 54.8, I think was the largest, no, sorry, 57.3, which was the largest in January. Is that an error?
So you're asking, is the machine working?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Nick, is
You're
the
on
machine
mute,
working?
Nick.
It's the small.
Nick, can you hear us? You're on mute, Nick.
It's.
There we go. Sorry, I'm busy folding through. A change of that description does seem unusual. Is this a diffusion tube, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
There could be a difference in analysis. That what we do as a borough is we get these little plastic tubes, attach them to lampposts and other pieces of street furniture. We then send them off for analysis. That's what the analysis comes back at. I suspect with that one, there's something gone wrong with the analysis, or there's something that's gone wrong with the tube. On occasions, you could have things like, I've chased spiders out of them and such like. You could simply have a tube that was not properly exposed during the entire period. So the pollution hasn't diffused into the tube, so it hasn't been recorded. So there could be, that kind of glitch is going to be a sampling error.
Thank you very much. You have a supplementary?
Yeah, so Nick, I thought it might have been a sampling error too. So what I did was I took it out of the annual mean raw data calculator, which we've left in the page 46 of that document as 48. If you take that out and get the mean, it rises 5 micrograms in the score. So that's more than the 2 or 3 micrograms, which you said was like a standard deviation. So that's above the standard deviation. That means that monitoring site is more polluted than we previously thought of them this year than we had. And if you actually look back on table D at some of the years, you'll see that actually that goes up and down, and it's still quite bad, and it remains quite a bad site for pollution in the borough throughout basically the time we've been monitoring it.
This is the 292 Green Street.
That's the one. Yeah. Now we talked earlier about...
Godfrey, do you have a question?
I'm getting to it.
Please.
We talked earlier about some of the improvements that we've made in NHM 1, NHM 16 and NHM 20 around improvements which have improved the air quality there. Is there a political commitment, given that we know that site is worse than we thought it was and then this data shows, is there a political commitment to bring in similar improvements that we saw in the 3 sites I referred to earlier into the area around that site?
I suppose that's to the Mayor.
Okay, so I'm going to ask if I've understood your question right. Similar improvements in those previous sites that we discussed where you saw a significant improvement, for want of a better term. Does that mean exactly the same types of interventions or just the improvements you want to see?
It means a similar type of intervention.
Right, a similar type of intervention. I would say that I have a commitment, and there is a political commitment to improve air quality in every single street including Green Street for our residents, I would have to engage with officers and technical experts as to what the best intervention for Green Street would be, given the character of Green Street and its importance as the site of our second largest town centre in the borough. So I'm not avoiding your question. I'm just being, yes, there is a commitment to reducing, but the interventions in those other sites that have resulted in the decreases that we've seen may not be suitable for Green Street, but we want to work towards reducing in Green Street. I know that, for example, there's a regeneration piece for Green Street. There's already work underway with Dave Hughes and Highways around how can it improve, that stretch of Green Street where there's the Barclays Bank, and then there's also a scheme coming forward around development of the site Green Street, which, to the consternation of some of the shopkeepers, will have an impact on the existing car park.
Okay, can I just stop you there? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah? Are you happy?
I think that's a really good answer.
Thank you very much.
I'm not sure you got what you wanted, but it was a good answer nonetheless. I'm going to bring in Councillor Corbyn.
Thank you. Then I'm going to have a little comment as well, which is we'd love it to pedestrianise a bit of Green Street, and so people can enjoy the shops more. Anyway, that might.
Are you asking if that's a political commitment to the mayor, or?
I know.
Okay, fair enough.
Was heading with that.
No worries.
I know that area really well, and there's a lot of most of the traffic that travels around there is just going through. It's not destination
Sure.
to go and use the lovely high street.
Sure.
Lovely to feel that we could have a more pedestrian emphasis there. My question was actually going to be like a kind of financial one. So going back to the LTNs and the healthy school streets and all of that. So how much of the revenue that those things generate is actually target spent on improving air quality?
Sorry, if I may, could you kindly repeat the question?
Of course. So of the money that's raised through the healthy school streets and the LTN, so basically obviously fines for people who inadvertently do that, of the revenue raised, how much of it specifically is spent on air quality, improving air quality directly?
Okay, I'm going to have to come back to you with a written answer because this is a highways, but just to say, of all the revenue that comes from PCN notices, by law, it cannot be used for anything other than highways. There's a highways related infrastructure works and associated. I would have to check with the highways.
Potentially mean that it could be spent on, for example, road improvements and not actually spent on improving air quality, theoretically.
Theoretically, I wouldn't want to say yes or no because I don't want to give you a wrong answer, but anything's theoretically possible, yes or no. Sorry.
That's fine. We'll take it there. Do you want a written answer to that? Warrants it?
We're happy to.
Yeah?
Nice
okay. So Clark, can you note that in terms of the question? The money from the LTN, from the parking, etc. Will it be spent on air quality? So the measures that are looking to tackle air quality is the money recycled into air quality stuff.
I think there is a report that was published in March, I think, that this committee that might have that.
Okay, and
that's fine. And give you a quick supplementary. We've got a few minutes now. What's your supplementary?
Supplementary is is a sort of general supplementary of all the lovely things that I read in the report about things that have helped. Lovely things like kids bringing plants into classrooms that reduce the nitrogen dioxide in the classroom by 13%. It was just thinking that it'd be lovely to be able to put the two things together and be able to have some money that is been levied to improve air pollution to be earmarked and spent on things like that. And as part of that, like creative solutions, just wondering, in a way, a question to John, who else are you sort of chatting to, or who might you want to chat to come up with creative ideas of how to engage schools and children, and maybe through them educate their parents into trying to do more stuff that's going to benefit them, you know, their own future health.
Yeah, well, you're right. We are interested in ideas of this kind of thing. To give an example, we are encouraging play streets in neighbourhoods, and there's one quite near me, and residents have taken that on themselves, and they've got a regular play street every few months where they bring out games, and the street is blocked off. It's a small street, but it's blocked off at both ends. Children come out, neighbours get to meet each other, and it's sort of advertising what a future could look like without cars, in fact. So that's just one example, but we're interested in all ideas of this sort, definitely.
Thank you. Councillor Morris, going to be the last question.
So page 127, just on point 15, just above it, there's an action, working with schools to adjust motorised pickup and drop-off in the process of finalising healthy route maps for in school sheet schools. Okay, and it says the further information is limited by funding. Can you just give me some details of what is limited by the funding?
Sorry, which page?
127.
35, the small page number 35, or 127, big page.
Okay. And which row is
It
it?
was there.
It's this one.
There. No, sorry, it's the one below there.
That one.
Once you found it, I can only give you 2 minutes to answer, unfortunately.
I'm so sorry, which,
So page 35 on there.
it's that one, working
Yeah.
with schools.
And-
Yes,
Limited by
correct.
funding,
Limited
okay.
by funding.
I suspect it's a highways question as well, in which case,
It is a high, I'm really sorry.
I will.
Okay, can we get a written response?
That's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can get a written response. That would be great. I want to say thank you very much to the Mayor, to Dave, to Councillor Whitworth, and to the officers on screen for attending. We're going to be moving on now to agenda item number 7. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much.
The
Thank you,
date,
everyone.
date of our next meeting, the date of the next meeting of this commission is the 15th of December, 2000. Thank you everyone for attending, and this now concludes the business of the committee, and I now declare the meeting closed at 9:24. Thank you very much.
Thank you.